So when Odysseus emerges from his shelter in Book 6 of the Odyssey, he sees the Princess of Phaeacia doing laundry with her maids in a pleasant teenage frolic down by the beach. The girls have turned their chores into a race, and when they're finished, they picnic, bathe, and play a game of ball. The sight is all giddy fun and untroubled innocence. But our hero must interrupt them to plead for help because he hasn't eaten or drank anything in days. He looks terrible. He's crusted over with dried salt water. He's mangy and he's naked. And as he comes into view of the girls, there is something he must consider. This is a scenario that was known to the ancient Greeks. The male intruder into a moment of feminine privacy. Odysseus would have known the story of that unlucky Theban prince Actaeon, who stumbled upon Artemis bathing with her nymphs, and he died for it. And Homer compares this Phaeacian princess to Artemis at line 112. White-armed Nausicaa, that's the princess, white-armed Nausicaa led their singing, dancing beat as live as Artemis, with her arrows striding down from a high peak, and nymphs of the hills race with her. It's a lovely image, but if you think that this innocence is defenseless against danger, you might be mistaken. And indeed, poor Actaeon encountered Artemis by accident, and we know what happened to him. Look at this Greek vase, which is at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and we can see what happens when Artemis has her privacy disturbed. Innocent oblivion becomes merciless vengeance. She calmly watches as the dogs rip Actaeon apart. She is delaying the fatal shot which will put him out of his misery. Whoever designed this artwork managed to give us a sense of how slowly she is raising the bow. This is the ruthless potential that is unleashed in Artemis when her protective instincts are provoked, and perhaps Nausicaa possesses this trait as well. So it would be a bad idea for Odysseus to approach her too aggressively, and he seems to know this, and thinks about it at line 155. Odysseus, torn now, should he fling his arms around her knees, the young beauty, plead for help, or stand back, plead with a winning word, beg her to lead him to the town and lend him clothing? This was the better way, he thought. Plead now with a subtle winning word and stand well back. Don't clasp her knees. The girl might bridle. Bad idea to venture too close to her. So that his life depends on the ensuing diplomacy he evidences in his choice of words to her. Here I am at your mercy, princess. So what I find fascinating about the ancient Greek link between happy innocence and protective vengeance is that it reveals their understanding of human nature as being in tune with the untaught instincts of the gut. Just because their poetry has these divinities flying around doesn't mean the Greeks didn't comprehend the human animal. And the second point I want to make about Book 6 pertains to the way to consider public opinion when deciding on a course of action. Let's think about what Nausicaa says. Once Odysseus is fully washed and dressed, and she sees that he is handsome, she decides that to be seen with him in town would be a bad idea. At line 299, I shrink from all our sea dogs' nasty gossip. At line 302, one of the coarser sort might say, now who's that tall, handsome stranger Nausicaa has in tow? Good riddance. Let the girl go roving to find herself a man from foreign parts. She only spurns her own. Countless Phaeacians round about who court her. Then interestingly at line 313, so they'll scoff. Just think of the scandal that would face me then. I'd find fault with a girl who carried on that way. So two things here. First is that she considers public opinion before she does something. And secondly, she does not have a bad attitude for having to think about what other people will see. She even has the wherewithal to note that she would think the same thing about herself as any onlooker. The ancient Greeks seem not to have thought that it was a great insult to your individuality if you considered other people and their opinions. It was just smart diplomacy. In ancient Athens, we know from Pausanias, they had altars in the marketplace that were dedicated to the divinities of rumor, shamefastness, and effort. And I think it is worth contemplating why these three things were worth honoring in equal measure. Shame and rumor were just as considerable as effort. So let's use this example of Nausicaa's anticipation of what the Phaeacians would think would they see her with Odysseus. She says that they would take her to task for choosing a random washed-up foreigner over men of quality from her own land. Now, significantly, there would have been some truth behind that impression. She has been spurning her own. We know this from some early lines in Book 6. She has been rejecting the best Phaeacians. So she has laid the groundwork for that type of misunderstanding. And she's wise enough to understand this, and so with a little extra forethought, she spares herself the scandal. I really love to see concepts like this in the classics. A stupid person would have said, "Come what may, I haven't done anything wrong, I don't care what people think," and when that person was ultimately scandalized, they would have wished, "Oh, I wish the world was a better place, a less prejudicial place." Not wise Nausicaa. She doesn't think like that. With a little thinking, she avoids the problem in the first place. So thinking about those three divinities again, in the Athenian marketplace, rumor, shame, and effort, I think the point is, or at least the gist of the point is, that some amount of deference to those three things will allow an individual to live a smoother existence. Little bits of effort that account for other people make our lives smoother. And I love thinking about this because it's counterintuitive to what seems to be the modern way. We would never openly honor the gods of shame and rumor. In fact, some of us seem to think that we should never feel shame, but rather it is for everyone else not to judge us. And I think the ancient Greek response to that would be that any thought that dwells on what other people should do differently and not on what we should do differently has neglected the altar of effort.